Spirit, won't you fall on my heart now? Start a fire in my soul. Fan the flame and make it grow. So there's no doubt or denying. And let it burn so brightly that everyone around can see that it's you that we need. Start a fire in me. You are the fire, you are the flame, you are the light on the darkest day. We have the hope, we bear your name, we carry the news that you have come to save. Only you can save. Start a fire in my soul, fan the flame and make it grow. So there's no doubt or denying. And let it burn so brightly that everyone around can see that it's you that we need. Start a fire in me. You are the fire, you are the flame, you are the light on the darkest day. Start a fire in me.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate Ralph coming and helping out tonight. Those of you that aren't familiar with Ralph, if you come at 8:30 and stay till 11:30 or 12 on Sundays, you'll get to hear a lot of him right in this room. My name's Charlie Glass. I'd like to welcome you to Chapter 6 of our study session, of our study of Jesus, the Bible, and homosexuality. We're going to have a little bit of a different program tonight. That's why we wanted to get started right on time. Afraid we're going to run out before we get finished talking. In fact, we've scheduled some meet and greet time after that we're going to have an opportunity to do some meet and greet. So I'd like to call Stevie up to give us our opening prayer, and then we'll get started.
Thanks, Charlie. Would everyone please join me in prayer? Heavenly Father, thank you so much for bringing us to this place to open hearts and minds. We pray that you will fill our hearts with love, our mouths with the words of compassion and understanding, and our minds with clarity to understand one another clearly. We thank you for all your blessings. We pray for each and every one of us in the coming week. In your heavenly name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. As I said, my name's Charlie Glass. I'm still relatively new at First Broad Street. Glad to be here. And I'm excited about this book and studying this book. First time I read it, I thought, this is perfect. And then I read the chapter that we're doing tonight, and I thought, this is great. This is right on target with where I've been. See, I think it's relationships. I think life is all about relationships. And it's relationships with our friends in the LGBTQ community that knock down the stereotypes that Jack Rogers talked about in this chapter. My journey from where I was about 15 years ago, thankfully, has evolved, probably similarly to many of you. For me, I am so thankful. You see, about a year ago, our 35-year-old daughter, Jennifer, emailed us and let us know that she was in a long-distance relationship with someone very special to her, and her name was Emily. Now, because of the influence of the relationships that I developed over the last 15 years, my natural instinct is one of unconditional love and support, just like it had been through her childhood, our kid's childhood. Didn't change when she told us that. And by the way, Emily's wonderful. We love her too. We spent Christmas with her this past Christmas. Anyway, because of what I believe is the importance of getting to know people, we've decided to take the time this evening getting to know 4 special people. So Tyler and Andy and Stevie and Sarah, will you come up to the stage with me now? Yeah, they don't need any more stroking. I have to tell you, I've known Tyler for a while, but I met the other 3 here in the last 3 or 4 weeks when I was getting ready for this. And all 4 of them have been just phenomenal. They all immediately said, I'm so excited. I'm an open book. I'll talk to anybody about anything. So they're willing to do that with you all tonight. And I'm grateful for that, and I think we're in for a treat. The sheets that I put on the table, you got blank lines on them. The idea is that there are going to be a couple times tonight where I'm going to give you a chance to talk at your tables. You can talk about further questions you have. Jot down questions that you want to ask. We're going to have a little bit of time during this hour that we may take some questions from the group. But if we don't, hang on to them, and you can use those to and use the time after this to ask follow-up questions. So, let's get started. I told you their first names, but I'm just going to let you guys introduce yourselves. Tell us your story. Things that we don't know about you. A lot of people here already know you, sort of. But what is it that you'd like us to know about you? To tell us your story. Tyler, we're going to start with you.
Can you hear me? Oh, you can. How much time do we have per question here? How deep are we going? Talking about as soon as I was born? No. My name is Tyler Ramey. I have lived in Kingsport, Tennessee my entire life. I just turned 34 yesterday. Thank you. Should really thank my mother. I have been at the YMCA in Kingsport, Tennessee for, I keep losing track, I want to say 15 plus years. And the YMCA was actually one of the very first places in my life that I can remember not feeling like I stuck out, if that makes sense. And so that was one of the unconditional love places that I felt in my life, so it will always have a very, very special place in my life. And anything that this man asks me to do, I have to do unquestionably. So when he talked to me about this, I was very excited and very honored just to be a part of it and to discuss whatever comes up this evening, and just very, very happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Andy Rogers. We met last week, too, and the weeks prior. I want to say I grew up in this church, but technically that's not true because I grew up in Oak Ridge, and I moved here in the 8th grade. My dad's family's been from the Kingsport area for years and years and years, and it felt like coming home. So I always say that Kingsport's kind of my hometown, but technically it's Oak Ridge and Kingsport. But now I work as a physician's assistant. I work with my dad in our family business, Performance Medicine, 423-382-3386. We're taking appointments Monday through Friday in our Johnson City location. 10% discounts for all new patients. Okay, I'm just kidding. Oh, well, not kidding, but yes, please come see me. So I kind of had a roundabout way of getting to where I'm at career-wise and spiritually and emotionally now. I originally went to the University of Tennessee. I started off in engineering. I didn't really know what I was wanting to do. I kind of wanted to carve this path that was unique to me. I feel like I'm a true genetic experience between my parents. My mom's a musician who has played here in the church, and my dad's a physician, so I studied biochemistry and musical theater, and everybody thought that was a little bit crazy, but that took me out to Los Angeles, and I lived there for 3 years to pursue acting, so I did a lot of catering, and then I learned what that industry was like. I ended up getting into pharmaceutical sales for type 1 diabetes medications. Both my sister and I are type 1s, and I've always been passionate about that. And that's what led me to come back to the East to go to school. And I ended up going to school at Mercer down in Atlanta and lived there for about 3 years. And I moved back a couple months ago. And again, I'm an open book. I could literally take the next hour just to sit here and talk on the mic, but I'm just very happy that you all are here and listening, just taking the step to even get to know someone. I do feel what is important is putting a name and a face to something and an idea or a group that is different than you, whether it is a different religion, a different sexual orientation, a different race. It just allows us to not say, oh, that group of people, those gays, they always are really well-dressed and good-looking. You can literally just say, my friend Andy is really well-dressed and good-looking. You know what I'm saying? So it puts a name and a face. I kid about that, but that's true. Putting a name and a face will help. So thank you for being here.
Hi, my name's Sarah Lawson. I grew up in Rogersville, Tennessee, just down the road a little ways. I grew up in a very small missionary Baptist church. My father was a minister, so we were always in church every time the doors were open. He also sang in a gospel trio, so we were traveling around to a bunch of other churches as well. So I grew up in the church. However, when my parents divorced when I was 8, I started going to church on my own because they both stopped going. So I would get up every Sunday morning and get myself ready, and one of my aunts would come pick me up, and we would go to church together. And then, fast forward a little bit, and I went to college at Walter State and got my nursing degree. And after I got my degree, I moved down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where I met this woman, which is my wife. And now we have a beautiful baby girl together, and that's about all. That's all I can think of right now.
Hey everybody, my name is Stevie Lawson. I'm married to this beautiful lady beside me. I'm married into the state of Tennessee. Some of you probably know me as the other one. Do you know Stevie and Sarah? Sarah has the incredible voice that sings in the church band. No. Do you know the other one? So I'm the other one, happily. Die-hard Georgia Bulldog fan, Pat. We're not going to let that go. I am from Jacksonville, Florida, originally, and I grew up in the Presbyterian church. And for every person, it's different. I never felt like God was telling me yes or no. I felt pursued by His love regardless. And I'm very fortunate because many, many people struggle with that. So I think it's very important to hear that, people focus on one small difference where there's so much commonality. I'll give you an example. Who here loves dogs? I love dogs. I think they're one of God's greatest creations. Who loves movies? Right? Pretty much everybody. I mean, come on. Music? Right? That's going to be everybody's hand. So there's so much commonality, and there's really only one small difference that you really wouldn't discuss in polite conversation anyway. So there's a lot of common ground, and I am very grateful for First Broad, our church family, the Turners, the Yaroshes, the Eastridge, anyone else that I have not mentioned, but people that have really strived to build a relationship with our family, regardless of what a church committee may or may not convene on. And that's really not important to me personally. I know it is to a lot of people, so that's not to be disrespectful. But the relationship is so important, and we are building some really terrific relationships here at First Broad, and I feel very, very blessed.
Great. Thank you all. Now let's get to some important information, okay? Yes.
Thank you.
When people talk out there, if there's no mic, you'll have to let me know what they say.
Okay. I'm on it.
Okay. We're going to start off, we're going to have some speed questions, okay, to get important information, okay? So you're going to give a quick answer. You're going to have to be quick, okay? What's your favorite dessert?
Oh my heavens. Okay. Food City cake with lard icing, not whipped.
A Gail Bogart cake.
All right.
Woo!
Molten lava chocolate cake.
All right.
Anything.
Anything. Favorite place of vacation?
New York City.
You just went there.
Gatlinburg, Tennessee.
Puerto Vallarta, Mexico.
You stole my answer, so I'll take the Keys. Florida
Okay.
Keys.
All right. Favorite shoes? Let's start at the other end.
Flip-flops. Any kind.
Flip-flops.
Yeah, Croc flip-flops.
I just got a pair of Allbirds. Look them up. They're my favorite. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go with Tom's.
Tom's. All right. Okay. Where in the world would you most like to visit?
New York City.
Oxford. I really want to go to Oxford College.
Ireland.
Italy.
Italy. All right.
All of Italy, not part of Italy. All of Italy.
Starting down there again, what are you most afraid of?
Well, I love spiders, so. Where the world is going, truthfully.
My daughter's teenage years.
Honestly, being buried alive, I don't get it. That terrifies me.
I would have to say commitment. You can laugh at that.
You said what? Commitments. Yes. Okay, what's your favorite event at FunFest?
Oh, the Taste of Tri-Cities.
When NSYNC came when I was in elementary school or middle school. Yep.
Yeah, the taste.
Just getting out, seeing all the people, hanging out when it's not too hot, though.
Favorite animal?
I think we covered that. Dogs.
Dogs.
Cats.
Dogs.
I'm the quintessential crazy cat lady. So cats.
I know.
We have 3 cats, by the way.
Okay, last one.
I won.
Who's your favorite boss?
You are.
Just kidding, just kidding. Okay. We're going to start out the next segment here. I'd like you to share with us, as personal as you're willing to be, appropriate. Talk about how you came out, about what you knew before you came out about homosexuality. Did you have people supporting you? What was the experience like? What did you think about? Just share with us that experience. Who wants to start?
I can go.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think. It was around, I was probably 14 or 15. And so you have to imagine that when I was that age, dealing with the fact that I was gay, dealing with the fact that I was so different than everything else, all I wanted was just a little bit of normalcy. So in my head, at the time, I remember watching, there was an MTV special on coming out and how great it was and how everybody was going to embrace you, and I was so excited. So I took my mother on a walk because I thought there's no escaping this, right? If we're like a mile down the road, we have to talk about it. And I told her, and she started crying, and she didn't stop crying until we got back home, and she did not talk to me for 3 days, and it was very traumatic. It did not go how I had in my head in the slightest, and for years and years and years, we never spoke about it. Somehow, within the past 5, 6, 7 years, she has become super accepting and obviously very apologetic about it. But it was not a good experience for me at the time. Now, as for my father, I still haven't fully come out to him, so if anybody knows Gary Ramey, I wasn't here tonight. We just won't talk about it. Sorry, Dad. What a way to come out. It's just not something in my family that was talked about very much, and in this society, I think as a whole in Kingsport, sometimes it was very much an unsaid thing. I think that atmosphere is a little bit different today for the better, even in Kingsport, Tennessee, but at the time, for me, it just was not a good experience. It was not the experience that I had hoped it would be. So, Sorry to kind of start on a downer.
Oh yeah. So prior to coming out, everybody always asked, when did you know? When did you know you were gay? Did you know as a kid? Really didn't know much about what I was feeling. I feel like I knew I liked boys when I was in elementary school, middle school. I just had that proclivity, but there was no other boys having boyfriends. There was always, you have your girlfriend. So I just did everything that my friends did. So it was never really an idea for me until dating became serious. And in high school, relationships got more serious and more physical. And it was something that I knew that I had been kind of masking to the point where it was going to come to a head at some point. So, but prior to me coming out and having, I just feel like the LGBT community is so in your face now. You know, there's so many gay characters on TV, there's gay celebrities. At the time when I was in high school, there wasn't really that, especially going on in the Tri-Cities. And certain things would stick out to me. I always would say, oh, I don't want to be like that gay guy. And I remember in high school at Dobbins Bennett, there were nobody was out, maybe one or two kids. And I remember one day, some guy that was mad went all around the whiteboards in high school and wrote, "It's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve," on all the whiteboards in high school, and put this kid's name on it that was out. So, and really it wasn't discussed. And at the time, I just thought, oh, that sucks, and also that will never be me. So went to college for a year and came out right around when I was 19. In hindsight, it's hysterical. The story is something that I will definitely write in a memoir one day. Happy 25th wedding anniversary, Mom and Dad, because that's when it actually happened, on their wedding anniversary. You remember, you were there. Yeah. So it's hilarious in hindsight, and I'll tell the story at a much later date because it would take the entire hour. But at the time, it was tragic. I couldn't stop crying. I wasn't dating anybody at the time. I had never had a boyfriend, so it was never, the question was always, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure you don't have a boyfriend? You've had girlfriends. And it was hard to explain, yes, I'm sure, even without trying that out, I'm sure. So it took a while and a few years to get used to it, but really I was truly blessed. I had a phenomenal experience with coming out, especially with the members of this church, my friends. My parents were instrumental in helping me realize always I was loved. First and foremost, I always knew I was loved. I didn't know. We took time with going through the experience of whether or not homosexuality was a sin. Now, that was something that took a little bit of time and studying, and I remember Mom called me. It had been a couple years after coming out. I was teaching tennis in New York, and she called me, and she said, I've read this book that we're reading today, the Jack Rogers book, and she said, it's changed everything I've thought about homosexuality and it being a sin. So she's become such an advocate, especially for kids at Dobbins Bennett. She's been a huge, huge advocate for especially kids in the church and parents in the church struggling with this concept of, I love my kid. I don't care if my kid, burns a house down, I'll still love my kid, but I just want to make sure I care about what's happening to them spiritually. I have this responsibility to not let them go to hell. So what do I do? And she's been very instrumental, and I feel like that's why I've been allowed to be a little bit more confident with it, especially with these last 10 years. So and I hate to say it, I have not had a truly negative experience. And I just guess I was surrounded by really great people, and truly it's from this church too. I will always remember the day. You remember the people who stamp your heart, especially in those times of struggle. And Joy Eastridge walked up Snake Hill to my doorstep, sat down in front of the house, and she gave me this cross. And this is I didn't ask her to do this. I didn't come out to Joy Eastridge and say, hey, I need help. She just came. She felt called to just come and tell me that I was loved. And this is before I went Up With People for 6 months. And that has always stamped my heart. Always, always stamped my heart. So just knowing, and you all are stamping us right now just by being here. So your actions do speak louder than words. So I'll never, ever forget that.
So I was probably about 11, 12 when I started feeling different. I just knew that I didn't really want to have boyfriends like all my friends did, but I did it anyway because, like he said, your friends were doing it and that was the norm. So I would have little boyfriends in middle school and stuff like that. But I could definitely tell that I was just different. I didn't know what it was. I had no context to even know what homosexuality was at that point. Like I said, I was raised in church and it was probably talked about, but it was just in a negative way, but I still didn't really know what it was. So it wasn't until about age 14 that I really learned about homosexuality and what it was and realized that I was gay. And so when I realized that, initially I came out to a couple of my close friends at high school, and that was not a good experience because pretty much all of them abandoned me except for one. And so I had to develop a new circle in high school. So I was dealing with all of that, and then I was going to have to come out to my mom. So I knew, and at this point my dad was not in the picture, so I had my mom and my Aunt Connie. They're basically my parents. So my Aunt Connie pretty much raised me as well, because while my mom would be at college or at work, being a single mom, she would, be busy a lot. So my aunt would take me in the evenings, she would take me to school in the mornings, pick me up and stuff like that. So I kind of had a very strong relationship with her, and they're very similar, so I knew that the way my aunt reacted would be the way that my mom would react as well. But my aunt always seemed a little bit easier to talk to, I guess because she was the aunt and not the mom. So I knew that I was going to come out to her first. So I remember I went over to her house, and because she just lived right behind us in the subdivision, so I went over there and I was sitting on a couch, and I told her there was something really important I needed to tell her, and I told her that I was gay, and she said, well, I was, of course, bawling my eyes out, but she was like, well, I love you no matter what, and I'm sad that the life that you're going to have to endure, the discrimination and all of that and the misunderstanding, but I will love you the same no matter what. So then after I left her house, I went back to my house and told my mom. And my mom had a very comedic response, probably just to break the tension because, again, I was bawling my eyes out. So I'll probably be doing that later, just so you know. But she said, well, there goes the grandkids. Just but she was kidding. And much to her surprise, years later, she has a grandchild now. But she was, the same. I love you no matter what. That's never going to change no matter what you do. It did take a little while of an adjustment period, like you were saying about how she felt, about whether or not it was a sin or, she never knew. She never thought I was going to go to hell because once saved, always saved. That's the way she believes. But she did struggle with the fact that, is it a sin or did God make you this way? And just some adjustment to me dating girls when she thought that I was going to be dating guys and, getting married and all this stuff that she thought would not ever come to fruition for me anymore. So that took a little bit of adjustment, but she was always right there by my side. She was super supportive. She took me to this festival up in Pittsburgh. There was this movie called Loving Annabelle that I was obsessed with, and it was about two women that were together, and I was just so crazy about it. So whenever I saw that they were going to have the actors there, I begged Mom. I was like, please take me, and she was like, okay. So we went, and it was, way outside of her comfort zone to be in like a pride type area around all these people that she'd never been around in her entire life. But it was a really awesome experience for me that displayed, just how far she's willing to go for me and how much she supports me and loves me. I'm very grateful that I have her and my aunt.
I'm grateful too, because I love her mom and her aunt. I know people say that about their in-laws, but I'm blessed to call them family. So when I was in kindergarten, and don't get me wrong, because I'm not saying yes, I definitively knew that I was gay in kindergarten. So this little boy named Richard used to pick on me relentlessly in kindergarten. And my mom picked me up from school one day, and she said, how was your day, honey? And I said, I hate that little boy. Can't stand him. And she laughed, and she said, honestly, honey, you're probably going to end up marrying him. And I laughed, and I said, wrong. I'm going to marry Amy Skelton, who was a little girl in my class. So, even though I say that in jest, I always think back on that because there was just not the connection with, and I dated guys, but there was not the connection that there is with women. I really went through my own struggle before I brought my family into it, and by the time I told my family that I was gay, I was totally fine with it. I told my mom and dad when I was at college, and they came to visit me, so I took them out to dinner, and my mother had a very adverse, strong reaction. She was in tears. I'm sure people were like, God, what is happening at that table? My dad was my dad has a great sense of humor, but he just kind of laughed, and my mom said, what are you laughing about? And, because she had made the comment that, you date guys. You could have any guy that you want. And my dad was like, well, great. Now she can have any girl that she wants. So what's it matter? So as things progressed, my parents we had a difficult relationship in a lot of ways, and they could be really hard people. But the one area that they truly excelled and blew me away in was their acceptance and their support. They were extremely gracious and welcoming to, girlfriends, friends, and never, except that one initial rocky beginning, anything about me being gay just didn't really, that wasn't something that fazed them one way or the other. I was still their daughter. They still loved me exactly the same way. And friends, took some time for friends to come along, but I was lucky. I didn't lose any friends. None of my friends rejected me or pushed me away for my sexuality. So I'm just a lucky girl.
That's great. I want to interject here. I really appreciate you guys and your honesty and your openness to share with us tonight. I got to ask, just open this up to the group of you. Whoever feels like you want to respond, go ahead. Unfortunately, many people today still feel like being homosexual is a decision. It's like choosing a certain lifestyle. How do you respond to that when you hear that?
I'm going to grab that because I do that a lot. So the night that my mother died, her nephew called the house, and I was in the living room, and my older sister was in the kitchen on the phone. And I heard her say, no, you're wrong about that. She's not going to hell. And I thought, what is going on in the kitchen? So she got off the phone and came in, and my cousin had called to say that I was going to be going to hell because I was gay. So I made a little note of that, and when I was in a better headspace, I gave Bill a call back. And, Bill and I had a long talk, and we got down to the it's a choice conversation. And I said, well, Bill, so we're agreeing that it's a choice. He said yes, and I said, okay. I said, so who's your best friend? Whatever his name was. I said, tomorrow morning, I want you to wake up, and I want you to choose to be attracted to Ed. We'll call him Ed, your best friend. I want you to love him. I want you to be close to him physically. I want you to want to build a life with him, because if it's just a choice and it's that easy, he said, well, now you're being ridiculous. And I said, oh, okay, but you did tell me that it was a choice. So I'm just asking you to make a choice. So if you can stop and think about it, it's not a light switch. You can't flip it on and off. It's simply how God made me.
It's not through lack of trying. I mean, if any of us were up here and probably didn't feel, and we're not homosexual or part of the LGBT community, we probably, if it were a choice, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. And that's the God's honest truth we want it. And it's hard, and I think that's a great example to try to put yourself into other shoes, and it's really hard to see that way with Oh, that sounds ridiculous because men have always been with women, but yeah, it's just if it were a choice, I think we all would have chosen something different. It's a much more difficult path to have this way. So I don't think knowing if you could foresee that nobody would choose to do it if it truly were.
I was going to say that I struggled with that whenever I first came out because that was what I had been taught at my church that I grew up in. And the Lawson half of my family, my dad's side of my family, is not supportive at all. So I grew up in the church with them because they were the majority of the church. It was like two families made up the whole church, and my family was half of it. So I was, very much drilled into my head that if you don't change, if you don't repent, you're standing in the way of others coming to Christ by you being here, and that, you need to change this, you need to stop acting this way and get out of this phase or whatever you're doing. And so every night, whenever I was, 12 years old, 12 to like 15, I would pray that, God, please take this away from me. Please make me normal. And then I finally realized that, he made me this way, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that they were the ones that were wrong. So it took me a long time to get there, but I'm there now.
I want to hug you. I mean, I just echo everything that they said. I think that Kingsport, Tennessee is a hard place to grow up being different. And so I think I speak for all of us when I say if we would have had that choice, we would have chosen it. Now, where I am in my life today, would I wake up tomorrow morning and be straight? No. But had you asked 13, 14-year-old Tyler Ramey at the time if I could take a pill and wake up and be normal and fit in and not be picked on every day and eventually give my mother grandchildren so she will get off my back, yes, I would. So, it's just hard. And I think, being in Kingsport, Tennessee, it just kind of heightens that. That's just the stereotype that you always have to face.
Thank you. One more real quick response here. If any of you have any words of wisdom, a quick suggestion to folks out here if they have children or grandchildren that all of a sudden one day say, I'm gay, what would you tell these parents, grandparents?
I mean, I think just love them. Just love them. I think we put such a stress and pressure on people. I don't expect Charlie to come up to me and say, hi, I'm Charlie Glass, and I really like women. I just don't expect that to happen. So I don't see why we... Right. So I don't see why it's such a big deal for homosexuals to have to announce it. You know what I mean? I just don't think it's, just love them. Act like it's nothing different than it's the person that you love and they're just telling you something about their life, and don't make a big deal of it. Don't not speak to them for days at a time. Ask questions and just be upfront and honest and just love. Love is the answer, I think, to all.
Same thing. Talk about it. Don't brush it under the rug. Don't say, okay, everything's fine, and then never talk about it again, because it'll only grow a bitter root. It's just, and that root will just grow and grow. You have to talk about it and not force them to talk about it. Have them talk about it in their own time. But I feel like a lot of the times it's like it's just how you were saying. It's this unspoken thing in the room, and it's the big elephant in the room, and you have to lean into being uncomfortable, and it's going to be very uncomfortable, and it'll only get worse if you don't just lean into it and just tell them that you're going to walk in the journey just like they're walking in it too.
Just kind of going back to what I said earlier seconding what Tyler said, is that this is a very small part of who you are. Just like, you don't expect someone to, I never hear heterosexuals coming up saying, hey, I'm heterosexual. How are you? I mean, it's just you wouldn't hear that. And I know that I have friends that, we might not have been friends under different circumstances, and being gay is one of the last things that they learned about me, and at that point, it didn't matter. Because sometimes people have to know you a little bit, find some common ground, and then things like that are, it's just a small part of who you are. don't focus on it.
I have something to add to that too. It may be a little bit unrelated. Okay.
ahead.
A lot of the times too, especially with my experience, I had done theater in college for about a year before coming out, and that was the natural thing to be like, oh, well, you were just around a bunch of gay guys. You're in theater, of course, you know. There's no coercion with with being gay and having friends who are not gay. I feel like the natural tendency to say who made you this way? Oh, it's just that person you're dating. You may like so and so, but you're not really gay, or they're trying to make you gay. That is not a thing. It is the furthest thing, and I feel like that is the big thing with the heterosexual community is the LGBT community is trying to make everybody gay. It's
agenda.
truly not. It's the gay agenda. Oh, they just want everybody to be gay, and that's not true. They just want everybody to, if you happen to be gay, to have a safe space to do it and a stage to stand on. I feel like it's a natural tendency is to say, well, it's your influences. Who have you been around lately? Has anybody ever had Miss Bovender or know Miss Bovender? She's a chemistry teacher at Dobbins Vintage. She's one of my favorite teachers, and Miss Crine, of course, too. Yes, but. Yes. So, but Miss Bovender would always say in chemistry when we didn't get something, she would always she'd be like, "It just is." Well, Miss Bovender, I don't get H2. It just is, Andy. It just is, and then we'd move on. Being gay just is. You either are, or you're not, or you're something in between, and there ain't anything you can do about it, and it's not somebody else trying to make you do it. So whenever if you do have someone in your life that is coming out, it's not through influence. It is just they now have this space, or it's not what they're watching on TV either. It's more than likely if they're watching The Water, yes, that made my diabetes too. No, I'm just kidding. But it's not what they're watching, who they're friends with. Really, what they're watching, who they're friends with, are just allowing them to be more comfortable to talk about it. And I do think starting that off so there's not a defensive mode, because they will get defensive and say it's. Okay, the end. I'm talking a lot.
Well, I think that's great. That's it speaks to something I just thinking about. That is a fear. I think for folks having a Sunday school teacher who might be gay, or a school teacher who might be gay. My kid's going to learn that while they're there. And what you're saying is it's not that way. No. All right. Well, good segue into the next topic. From your perspective, and this is throwing this out, so whoever feels inclined led to speak first. From your perspective, why is it so important for the church to get this right?
Because we're all God's children. Period. There's just a period after that.
Because so many people are being led away from God because of the way that the church reacts. There's so many. I mean, I've got personal friends of mine that grew up in church, and then they were shunned by their church, and now they're atheists. They don't believe in God because of the way they were treated by the church. And we can only bring more people in, whether you agree or disagree, if you can just love one another and be accepting, and we'll figure the rest out later. But don't say negative, hurtful things and make people run away from God. That's all you're doing if you do that. Just take that into consideration. That's people's souls that's on the line.
Yeah, I just ditto exactly what you're saying. I went to a really wonderful church, and I feel like we talked about this when we met at, it was Hollywood United Methodist when I lived in Los Angeles, and it's right in the middle of Hollywood. It was a phenomenal church, but very traditional. There was, it looked a lot like this church actually, just right there next to the Hollywood Bowl. And there were a lot of different people there because it's in the middle of Hollywood, right off the Sunset Strip. And there was one Bible study that I went to where there were 3 gay guys, one person who had no arms, 3 homeless people, and someone who was blind with their dog. And none of that stuff was talked about. And literally, we were just talking about the Word. And I feel like that's really it was such a great reminder to me that none of this physical stuff, this doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to God. Of all things, it doesn't matter to God. Why should it matter to us? Everybody just wanted to learn the Word. And if you close your doors to people just because of something that you feel God is trying to tell them, then it leads to negative experiences.
I mean, I think it's important to get it right because you have kids who are now at ages that were very important for us in terms of who we interacted with in and outside of church, that are soaking up what you're saying and how you're reacting to them more than you will ever know. So it's just important to love them. Again, I go back to love because I think that's the answer for everything. And they're listening. Like if my niece and nephew are in the car and my mother is being ridiculous as she most always is, and I have to say, little ears, like there are little ears happening right now. You've got little ears that are listening to you. And so you have the opportunity to be a voice for them and to help them feel better. And I remember vividly being younger and feeling like church, well, I don't want to go to church because those people don't like me. I mean, I vividly remember that. So I would go when I was forced to, but as soon as I had the opportunity not to go to church, I chose not to go to church. And why is that? It's just even though it probably wasn't every single person in that church that didn't agree with me, a high majority probably did not, truth be told. And so I think it's important to kind of help that stigma. That's why it's important to do things like this and just to talk about it and get it out in the open and just love everybody.
So, how would you describe what you'd be looking for in a church, or the LGBT community would be looking for in a church?
I mean, for me, and I can't, I would say that probably there's some similarities, but just what we have experienced at First Broad, regardless of what's going on a national or international level, people are still making an attempt to build a relationship with you, to get to know you, to understand you, and are welcoming you, not just into church life, but into other aspects of their lives. And I think that that's imperative.
Just where it's a non-issue. It just like I was saying earlier with what Ms. Beverly said. It just is, and you can just come in as you are, and that's not something that's written on your sleeve, or I don't know. That's my hope and my wish for all the LGBT community or anything that makes you different. Is that it's a non-issue. It just doesn't matter. You come into church and you just come and it's really not about that anyways. It doesn't matter if you have kids. It doesn't matter. It just is.
You sort of answered this a little bit there, but if you were to make any suggestions for our church to be more affirming, would you have any suggestions, any thoughts, any ideas?
And they did just publish the banner that's hanging out there with mine and Stevie's face on it with our daughter and representing all families. I think more stuff like that, and maybe in an environment where LGBT are going to see it, because they might not have saw it when they're driving down the 4-lane or come to the church, but any means. But if I don't know, materials were handed out, or if there was a presence in the LGBT community saying, we're here for you, we support you, we love you, please come be a part of our church, I think that would just, do wonders. Because I don't know that there's a lot of that out there where they're actively seeking LGBT. I think it's just well, if they happen to end up in our church, we're going to love them, but let's not try to go get them.
Like a don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
Okay?
I think that this event speaks volumes. Just the fact that First Broad is willing to open the door to this and get people talking to one another and exchanging life experiences and ideas it's huge.
Great. I agree. Okay, we're going to take a quick break now, and I'd like all of you to just share with your tables something you may have learned, something you still have a question about. Write down a question. Do this really quickly, and then we're going to take a couple minutes for questions before we start trying to get wrapped up here. So you're on speed dial right now, speed conversation. Okay, we're going to start now with questions. So if anybody has a question, if everybody does, whoever's jumping up and down the hardest will get asked first. Here we go.
So, other than the misconception about it being a choice, if you could erase one stereotype that a number of straight people have about the LGBTQ community, what would it be?
Yes, I have one. Sorry, was that to Sarah? Okay, you were looking at this side. Can I answer it? I do. I do have a stereotype. My stereotype is that that the LGBT relationships and same-sex relationships are about lust and not about love. And I think a lot of people in their minds go to the actual physical act of what same-sex relationships are and not this beautiful couple who has a daughter and a family and a house and a home. That's what I mean, that's not true across every person who is in a same-sex relationship, nor is it true who's in heterosexual relationships. But really, I think people in their mind automatically go to lust and not love. And that really is, that's what it's about to me, is we want partnership and companionship and relationships and family. And we want the same thing. Sorry.
So you're saying that heterosexual couples that get started because they are physical, they have a physical attraction, and then they have kids.
Yes.
You
Was that
know?
the question?
I mean, here's a couple that have decided to be together, and now they have a kid. It's the same thing.
Same thing. Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, that, and I cannot tell you, I was a bartender for a long time at a gay club, a very large gay club, and I cannot tell you the number of married, sometimes married, very prominent men, and their poor, I would always just imagine, man, what is the poor wife? I mean, the bottom line is that if people are, not go right, well, it emerges in a number of different ways. So that's one reason that it's so important to be true to yourself. But it's not, promiscuity doesn't fall under one sexual orientation at all.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more. If someone has a burning question. Yes.
You've sort of talked about this, but is there anything that either individually or as a group that we can do to undo some of the hurt that's happened, either individually or to the whole community, besides just talking about it? And if that's what we need to do, we need to do it.
I think just become someone's family, because so many of us are missing half of their family or a whole family. So make relationships and love us. That's all we want.
Okay.
Hey, Charlie, can I let
Yes,
everybody know
please
something?
do.
So if you have a question that you are not comfortable asking in front of all these people, please do not hesitate while we're, just kind of mingling to come and ask. It does not matter what that question is. I'm really not that sensitive or easily offended, so Sarah and I both felt we had that discussion one day going home in the car. What if people are apprehensive about asking a question in front of someone else? So if you have something you'd like to ask, please come ask it.
Okay, one last thought. What would you want to leave with folks tonight that you haven't shared yet? Just a nugget of information that you think would be important for them to leave here with.
Well, I couldn't take a nap today because I was thinking about mine, so I wrote it down. So, as I said, the Lawson side of my family has not been supportive at all and have been pretty much missing from my life. But we have had conversations about it. I've tried to mend bridges. But with one of my aunts, one time I was having a discussion about my sexual orientation, and she said, and I said, I am who God made me, and He doesn't make mistakes. She said, you're right, Sarah. God doesn't make mistakes. People do. At the time, that broke my heart, but today I know that she is correct, only I am not the one who is mistaken.
Final nugget. I keep bringing up all these New York stories, but it was a very moving trip that I just recently had in New York City, okay? I was on the New York City subway multiple times. One time accidentally at 3 a.m., which is a whole different other story, and was very scared. But one comforting thing that I found from the New York City subway is that you have people of all different ages, all different races, all different sexualities. I saw some people dressed up as chickens, but no one said a word. Everyone was accepted in that subway. Nobody was judging anyone. I've never felt more included by being ignored, if that made sense. I was like, I don't stick out here. It's very weird. I mean, it was a very unique experience. So I think doing whatever you can, I don't want to say like, let's make church into the New York subway because that'd be a little creepy. But do as much as you can just to help everybody feel like they're blending in. I think sometimes we're so used to sticking out that sometimes we just want a little continuity. We just kind of want to fall into the background, so to speak, in terms of acceptance and love. So just try to be that for people.
I feel like since I've come out and kind of grown in my journey as a gay Christian man, I've had to grow in my empathy as well. I feel like on both sides of this table, we sometimes unfairly assume the other person thinks differently than we are. I've definitely done this on 2 occasions to friends of mine who I just assumed would hate what I was going through, and I assumed they were judging me, and I assumed they were talking about behind my back. I never asked them or talked to them about it. I have such empathy for those, and especially those if you're sitting right here and you're not really sure where you stand on it, and you're just trying. I have empathy for people who are trying, and I feel like from the LGBT community, we have to have just as much empathy and care and love towards those who don't necessarily understand that just as what we're wanting for people who don't necessarily understand what we're going through. So I feel like it's a two-way street. And in the cases where I've done that and said, oh yeah, so and so, he hates the gays or whatever, it wasn't true. And I've shut off this friendship that could have been blossomed into something. He could have been an advocate. And I just assumed, and I feel like a lot of the LGBT, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like a lot of us feel like anybody who goes to church and anybody who's a Christian probably already thinks, well, oh, okay, they're being nice because it's Southern Sugar Sweet, but they think we're going to do, like, that we're really devious. And I don't think that's true all the time. I don't. And I'm really, really just thankful that y'all are here. I've said it a couple times over the past hour, but just by showing up and trying it's just like Joy Easter says, stamped my heart. It's stamping us right now. So don't. I'm just not taking any of this for granted. So I just want to thank you all for even coming here and being a part of this series, and for First freaking Broad Street to be open to this. I don't think I've lived in New York and LA and Atlanta, and that was the one thing about moving back. I wanted to work for my family business and be close to family, but I was like, I'm going to be taking 10 giant steps backwards by being in a kind of a repressive environment. And look what I walked into. This is not anywhere near repression. So I'm just very, very proud of our church, for sure.
Well, I think probably the most important thing I could leave you with is that this year the Georgia Bulldogs are going to beat Tennessee again. Go Dogs, Pat Turner. I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. You hurt my feelings. It hurts my... You're right, though. Well, I want that, too. No one wants that, probably more than me. And Kirby Smart, of course. I would just say keep building those relationships. They are so crucial. No one in the history of humanity has ever changed their mind about something because you told them that they had to, or someone on television told them that they had to feel or like a certain thing. It never happens that way. You have to know someone. You have to have a one-on-one connection with someone for your heart and mind to change. So thank you for coming out here to have a connection with us today and allowing us to maybe change your heart and your mind.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going to ask for a round of applause for these folks, but you did it already.
Wait a second, Mom. Wait a second. If you need to say something, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
You want the mic?
Further, age 12 to 28, and suicide is the second leading cause of death. And among those kids that commit suicide, if they are LGBTQ, they have a 4 times greater chance of them actually taking their own life because they feel that they are doing something bad by what they feel inside. And so it is important for me, and I hope it's important for all of you guys, for the church to change, for the church to take a stand for the gay community, because they are not wrong. They are not wrong for being who they are, for feelings of love for somebody else. Because they love someone, they are being crucified by other kids, by parents. I stand with parents all the time whose kid has come out and the parent is coming to me, and they are just like, they're disconnecting with their kid. They don't know how to talk. They're so disappointed. The first words they'll tell me is, I'm just so disappointed that they're gay. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we've got to get to that kid very quickly, because for a kid to feel like they're a disappointment, that their birth was a disappointment, that their love for someone is a disappointment, they could be one of those kids that we lose. And so I think the church does need to take an active role in changing the way that we that our belief system is having a change. It's time for that, and we need to definitely take action on it. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. What I'd like to ask everybody to do is to stand up and circle up. Sarah and Ralph are going to have a closing song. To take your paper with you because we're going to read the prayer together after the song.
I would like everybody to just listen to the words of this song. The first time I heard it, it really spoke to me, and I hope it'll speak to you the same way, especially what we've been talking about throughout this study. Who am I that the highest King would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me, his grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God, yes I am.